I didn't mean to become a legend. I meant to find the bathroom. That distinction matters to me, even now, years later, when my name is etched into alloy walls and spoken in hushed tones by a species that once thought humans were barely civilized mammals with delusions of relevance. But on that day, my first day aboard Kepri Station, the largest neutral trade hub in the spiral arm, I was just tired, jet-lagged, and desperately regretting the third cup of station-brewed stimulant tea. Kepri Station was a miracle of alien engineering, a rotating halo of habitats, docks, and markets, stitched together by treaties older than human spaceflight. The station didn't belong to any one species. It belonged to protocol. Thousands of rules layered atop one another, governing everything from gravity tolerances to eye contact etiquette. Humans were new to it all. New enough that we still had probationary member badges in the Galactic Compact. New enough that most aliens assumed we'd accidentally poison ourselves on shared air filters if left unsupervised. I was there as a junior logistics officer, glorified paperwork handler, tasked with coordinating cargo manifests between human freighters and alien trade guilds. Important work, they told me. Historic, they said. Right then, it mostly felt like paperwork with extra limbs. I followed the flow of foot traffic down a polished corridor, signage glowing in half a dozen alien scripts. My translator implant hummed softly as it tried to keep up. Rest cycle facilities. Nutrient dispensers. Authorized personnel only. I slowed. The arrow for rest facilities flickered, then dimmed entirely. Typical. Kepri Station was older than most civilizations still using it. Things broke. I sighed, scanned the nearby doors, and picked the one that looked right. Smooth metal. Neutral markings. Slightly recessed handle. I pushed it open and stepped into silence. Not the normal hum of station life. Not the overlapping chatter of 100 species. This silence was heavy, intentional, like the inside of a sealed vault. The door slid shut behind me with a final, airtight thunk. I froze. The room was enormous, far larger than the corridor suggested. The floor was black glass veined with faint red light. The walls curved upward into shadow, broken only by vertical glyphs that pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. At the center of the chamber stood a ring of alien figures. They weren't just aliens. They were important aliens. I recognized some from briefings and security dossiers. A towering Phyrexian with crystalline spines, a trio of Mantari diplomats bound together by biosilk, a Thauran arbiter whose species only appeared in public during matters of existential consequence. And seated above them all, on a raised dais of living metal, was a being I'd only ever seen in restricted archives. A high conclave executor. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a bathroom. This was a closed conclave chamber, the highest authority on Kepri Station. A place humans were explicitly forbidden from entering without unanimous invitation. The kind of place where wars were prevented or authorized. Every eye turned toward me. Some of them had more than two. The executor's voice filled the chamber without echo, without volume, directly inside my skull. The human has entered without sanction. I swallowed. Sorry, I said aloud, my voice sounding painfully small. Wrong door. A ripple passed through the chamber. Not movement reaction. The Mantari shifted uneasily. The Phyrexian spines flared a deeper red. Unauthorized entry into a conclave session wasn't a minor offense. It was a violation of station law, diplomatic protocol, and about 12 treaties humans had signed with trembling hands. Punishments ranged from memory erasure to indefinite detainment. Or worse. The executor leaned forward. You are aware of the consequences of this action. I nodded. Slowly. Yes, I said. Then, because my brain short-circuited under pressure, I added, "But in my defense, your signage is terrible." The silence deepened. For half a second, I was sure I'd just doomed our species. Then something unexpected happened. The Thaurin Arbiter emitted a sharp, clicking sound, its species equivalent of surprise. The Mantari trio tightened their biosilk bond. The executor paused. "Clarify." I gestured weakly back toward the door. The corridor markers flickered. The rest facility arrow went dark. I assumed this was a public access room. That wasn't entirely true. I assumed it was something boring and safe. But panic had stripped my filter away. The executor regarded me for a long moment. "You speak without fear." I laughed, a short, hysterical sound. "Oh no. I'm absolutely terrified. Humans just talk when we're scared." Another pause. The Virexian shifted its weight. "The human does not display submission cues." "I don't know what those are," I said quickly, "but I promise I mean no disrespect. I'll leave. Immediately. I won't even remember what I saw." Honestly, I wasn't paying attention. I was thinking about bathrooms. That did it. The chamber reacted all at once, an overlapping surge of alien emotion, confusion, disbelief. The executor raised a limb, silencing them. "You entered during deliberation over the Karak escalation." I blinked. I knew that name. Everyone did. The Karak were a war species, ancient, aggressive, technologically monstrous. Their fleets had begun massing near neutral space, testing borders, ignoring warnings. The Conclave had been debating preemptive action for weeks. "You are discussing war?" I asked. "We are determining whether extinction-level force is required." The words landed like ice water. I should have shut up. I should have bowed, apologized again, and begged to be escorted out. Instead, something old and human stirred in my chest. "Have you tried talking to them?" I asked. Every being in the chamber turned toward me. The Virexian hissed. "The Karak do not negotiate. They respect only dominance." I shrugged. "So did we. Once." The executor tilted its head. "Explain." I hesitated. This was insane. I was a junior officer. I wasn't authorized to speak on humanity's behalf, let alone lecture the Conclave. But they were listening. "Humans used to believe war was inevitable," I said slowly. "That strength meant conquering first. We nearly wiped ourselves out proving that point. Twice." I took a breath. What stopped us wasn't bigger weapons. It was realizing that survival isn't about dominance. It's about adaptability. About finding ways to make yesterday's enemies tomorrow's allies. The Mantari whispered among themselves, their translator field shimmering. The Thaurin Arbiter leaned forward. "Your species still engages in conflict." "Of course we do," I said. "We're not saints. But we learned something important. Every war you avoid makes you stronger than one you win." The executor was very still. "The Karak have rejected all prior overtures." "Then you're speaking the wrong language," I said. "Some species don't listen to words. They listen to cost. Not threats. Consequences." The Virexian rumbled. "You propose intimidation."
"No," I said.
"I propose proof." I didn't realize I was pacing until I stopped. "Humans are new here. You think we're weak. And honestly, compared to you, we are. But we survived a planet that tried to kill us every day. We evolved on scarcity, on risk, on improvisation." I looked up at the executor. "Let us talk to the Karak. Not as conquerors. Not as diplomats. As survivors." The chamber was silent for a long time. Finally, the executor spoke. "If your species fails, the cost will be borne by all." I nodded. That's usually how it works. Another pause. Very well. The glyphs along the walls flared brighter. The conclave will authorize a single human envoy. I felt dizzy. 1. The executor's gaze locked onto me. You entered the chamber. You spoke without invitation. You will go. My mouth went dry.
Me.
The meeting with the Carrack didn't happen on Kepri Station. It happened in deep space, on the edge of a red dwarf system where their war fleet loomed like a steel storm. I stood alone in a reinforced shuttle, staring out at vessels that dwarfed human dreadnoughts. My hands shook as I activated the comm channel. This is Lieutenant Aaron Cole of Earth, I said. Requesting dialogue. Silence. Then a voice like grinding stone. You are insignificant. Probably, I agreed. But I'm also not armed. And I came alone. That earned a response. The Carrack commander appeared on the hollow. Massive, scarred, eyes burning with old rage. Speak. I didn't threaten them. I didn't plead. I told them our story. About near extinction. About rebuilding. About learning that survival wasn't about who you crushed, but who you convinced to stand beside you when the universe got cruel. I told them what would happen if they attacked. Not conquest, not glory, just endless resistance from a species that refused to stay down. And if you don't, I finished, voice steady, you gain something better than territory. You gain allies who know how to endure. The Carrack commander stared at me for a long time. Then, slowly, it inclined its head. We will observe. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't war. By the time I returned to Kepri Station, the story had already spread. The human who walked into the conclave by mistake. The human who spoke without fear. The human who faced the Carrack alone. They called me the Doorwalker. They said humans were reckless. Unpredictable. Dangerous in ways no algorithm could model. And for the first time, when humans entered a room, the galaxy didn't look down on us. They paid attention. All because I took one wrong door and proved that sometimes humanity's greatest weapon isn't firepower, it's the courage to speak when silence would be safer. The galaxy did not change overnight. That was the first thing I learned after becoming a legend. There were no parades waiting for me when I stepped off the shuttle on Kepri Station. No cheering crowds, no ceremonial banners unfurling from the station's spines. Life continued the way it always had, cargo haulers drifting in, diplomats arguing in controlled tones, merchants pretending not to notice the tension in the air. But everything felt different. I felt it the moment I walked through customs. Security officers, species that previously wouldn't make eye contact with humans, paused. Some inclined their heads. Others studied me with a new, unreadable intensity. My human identification badge was scanned twice instead of once, not out of suspicion but curiosity. Whispers followed me down the corridor. That's him. The one who addressed the conclave. The Doorwalker? I hated the name. It made the whole thing sound intentional. The truth was far messier. I was summoned to the conclave chamber 3 days later, this time through the correct door. The chamber looked the same. Black glass floor, pulsing glyphs, air thick with authority. But the atmosphere had shifted. Where there had once been cold detachment, there was now something closer to anticipation. The High Conclave Executor addressed the assembly. The Carrack fleets have withdrawn from the neutral border. A ripple moved through the gathered delegates. They have not disarmed. They have not surrendered. But they have halted expansion. That alone would have been considered a victory. Then the Executor continued. They have requested observation rights to human space. The chamber erupted. The Phyrexian delegate bristled. Observation leads to exploitation. The Mantari spoke in layered harmonics. Or, to understanding. The Thauran arbiter tilted its elongated head. This outcome deviates from all predictive models. The executor raised its limb. The deviation is the point. Every eye turned to me. I stood there, hands clasped behind my back, heart hammering like I was back in that shuttle facing the Carrick fleet. I didn't win anything, I said carefully. I just gave them another option. The executor studied me. Your species repeatedly demonstrates this pattern. Pattern. I echoed. You survive by reframing conflict, by redefining victory, by introducing uncertainty where certainty would lead to annihilation. I swallowed. That's just being human. The executor's voice softened, something I hadn't thought possible. Then the galaxy must learn to account for humanity. That was the day humans were removed from probationary status. That was the day Earth gained a permanent seat at Kepri Station. And that was the day the Conclave quietly rewrote half its protocols, because one species had proven that the rules themselves could be a liability. Life didn't become easier after that. If anything, it became heavier. I was promoted far beyond my comfort level. Titles were added to my name: liaison, envoy, crisis intermediary. I spent more time in negotiation chambers than in my own quarters. Every emerging conflict seemed to end with the same phrase: send the human. I learned something important during those months. The galaxy had never been afraid of humanity's strength. It had been afraid of our unpredictability. We weren't the strongest. We weren't the most advanced. But we were the species that would walk into impossible situations armed with nothing but stubborn hope and an unshakable belief that things didn't have to end badly. The Carrick began their observations quietly. Their vessels stayed at the edge of human systems. Their warriors watched our cities, our stations, our children floating in zero-G playgrounds. They saw us argue. They saw us cooperate. They saw us fail and rebuild. 1 year later, a Carrick envoy arrived on Earth. Unarmed.
Alone.
He asked to speak to me. We met in a quiet chamber overlooking the curve of the planet. Blue oceans. White clouds. Fragile, breathtaking life. You told us survival is not domination, he said. I did. You were correct. That was the closest thing his species had to an apology. Or a compliment. Years passed. The legend faded into history, then into study material. Cadets at Conclave academies were taught about the Doorwalker incident, not as a warning, but as a case study. Do not underestimate humans. Do not assume intent from accident. Do not mistake empathy for weakness. As for me, I eventually stepped down. I returned to logistics by choice. Paperwork was comforting, predictable, human. Sometimes, when I walk the corridors of Kepri Station, I pass the old junction where it all began. The signage has been fixed now.
Bright. Clear.
Impossible to misread. I always pause there. I look at the door I should have taken, then the one I did, and I smile. Because the galaxy likes to believe legends are forged in grand acts of heroism, battles, sacrifices, glorious last stands. But the truth? Sometimes legends are born from exhaustion, bad signage, and a human who refuses to stay quiet when the universe expects obedience. I didn't mean to change the galaxy. I just took the wrong door and proved that humanity belongs in every room it dares to enter.